Hi everyone, and welcome to Formal and Informal Situations in English. I'm Sophia.
And I'm James. We're here to help you improve your English skills by understanding the differences between formal and informal English. In this podcast, we'll talk about when to use formal and informal language, share some common expressions, and give you tips to sound more natural in different situations.
That's right, James. English can be tricky because the way we speak changes a lot depending on who we're talking to and where we are. For example, the way you talk to your boss at work is different from how you talk to your friends at a party.
Exactly, and understanding these differences can really help you feel more confident and comfortable when speaking English. So, let's get started.
We'll introduce you to the basic idea of formal and informal English. We'll discuss when to use each one and give you some examples to help you understand better.
So, what do we mean by formal and informal English? Well, formal English is used in more serious or official situations. It's polite, respectful, and follows certain rules. For example, you would use formal English in a job interview, a business meeting, or when writing an academic paper.
Right, and informal English is used in more relaxed, casual situations. It's more conversational and can include slang or contractions. You use informal English when you're talking to friends, family, or people you know well.
Let's think about an example. Imagine you're writing an email to your professor. You'd probably say something like, "Dear Professor Smith, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to request an extension on my assignment due to personal reasons. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Jane Doe."
Now, if you're texting a friend about the same thing, you might say, "Hey, I need more time on that paper. Gonna ask for an extension. Wish me luck."
See the difference? The formal email is polite, structured, and uses full sentences. The informal text is relaxed and much shorter.
Exactly. So, let's break down some common situations where you might use formal or informal English.
Great idea. Let's start with formal situations. As we mentioned, formal English is often used in professional settings. This includes job interviews, business meetings, official emails, and presentations.
In these situations, it's important to use polite and respectful language. For example, instead of saying, "Can I have this?" you might say, "May I have this, please?" Or instead of "I want to know," you could say, "I would like to inquire."
Yes, and in formal writing, you should avoid using contractions like can't or won't. Instead, use cannot or will not. Also, try to use more sophisticated vocabulary. For example, instead of saying big, you might say large or significant.
Now, let's talk about informal situations. Informal English is used when you're with friends, family, or people you're comfortable with. This includes casual conversations, text messages, social media posts, and when you're hanging out with friends.
In informal English, it's okay to use contractions like I'm or you're. You can also use slang and more casual expressions. For example, instead of saying hello, "How are you?" you might say, "Hey, what's up?"
And it's not just about the words you choose, but also the tone. Informal language tends to be more relaxed and friendly. For example, instead of saying, "I am very excited," you might say, "I'm super excited."
That's a good point, Sophia. The tone can really change the feel of a conversation. In informal English, you might also use more phrasal verbs. For example, instead of "I will continue," you might say "I'll keep going."
Phrasal verbs are a big part of informal English. These are verbs combined with prepositions or adverbs like look up, get over, or hang out. They make your speech sound more natural and conversational.
And don't worry if this seems like a lot to remember. We'll go over more examples and give you plenty of practice.
For now, just try to get a feel for when you might use formal versus informal English. Think about who you're talking to and the situation you're in.
Let's do a quick recap. Formal English is used in serious or professional situations. It's polite, structured, and uses more sophisticated vocabulary. Informal English is used in casual settings. It's more relaxed, conversational, and often includes slang and contractions.
We'll dive deeper into specific phrases and expressions for both formal and informal situations. We'll give you some handy tips to help you switch between the two smoothly.
Now, we're going to dive deeper into specific expressions and phrases you can use in different situations. This is really going to help you sound more natural and appropriate, whether you're in a professional meeting or chatting with friends.
That's right, James. We'll start with some common phrases used in formal situations and then compare them with their informal counterparts. This way, you can see the difference clearly and know when to use each one.
Let's get started with greetings and introductions. In formal settings, you might say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. These are polite and respectful ways to greet someone.
Yes, and when introducing yourself formally, you might say, "Hello, my name is Sophia Brown. It's a pleasure to meet you." This is clear and respectful, perfect for professional environments.
In informal situations, the greetings are much more relaxed. You can say hi, hey, or what's up. When introducing yourself informally, you might simply say, "Hi, I'm Sophia." It's short and friendly.
Exactly. Now let's talk about asking for something. In formal English, you might say, "Could you please provide me with," or "Would it be possible to get?" For example, "Could you please provide me with the report by tomorrow?"
In an informal setting, you can be more direct and casual. You might say, "Could you get me?" For example, "Can I have the report by tomorrow?" Notice how it's shorter and less formal.
Another important area is giving and receiving invitations. In formal English, you might say, "I would like to invite you to our annual conference next month."
Informally, you might say, for example, "Do you want to come to our party next month?" It's more casual and friendly.
When it comes to expressing gratitude, formal English uses phrases like "Thank you very much," "I appreciate your help," or "I am grateful for your assistance." For example, "Thank you very much for your help with the project."
In informal situations, you can say, "Thanks a lot," "Thanks for your help," or even just "Thanks." For example, "Thanks for your help with the project." It's simpler and more conversational.
Now let's look at how to apologize. In formal English, you might say, "I apologize for any inconvenience caused," or "Please accept my sincerest apologies." For example, "I apologize for any inconvenience caused by the delay."
Informally, you could say, "I'm sorry about that," or "Sorry for the trouble." For example, "I'm sorry about the delay." It's less formal but still polite.
When giving opinions, formal English often uses phrases like "in my opinion," "I believe that," or "it is my view that." For example, "In my opinion, this strategy will be beneficial for our company."
Informally, you might say, "I think," "I feel like," or "to me." For example, "I think this strategy will work great." It's more relaxed and straightforward.
Asking for clarification is another area where formal and informal English differ. Formally, you might say, "Could you please clarify what you mean by?" Or "I am not sure I understand. Could you explain that further?" For example, "Could you please clarify what you mean by improvement plan?"
Informally, you can say, "What do you mean by?" or "Can you explain that?" For example, "What do you mean by improvement plan?" It's more direct and less wordy.
When ending a conversation or a meeting, formal English often uses phrases like "Thank you for your time," "I look forward to our next meeting," or "Best regards." For example, "Thank you for your time. I look forward to our next meeting."
Informally, you might say, "Thanks for your time, see you later," or "Take care." For example, "Thanks for your time. See you later." It's friendlier and more casual.
That was great, James. I hope this helps our listeners understand how to switch between formal and informal English depending on the situation.
Yes, and remember, the key is to think about who you're talking to and the context. If you're in a professional or serious setting, lean towards formal English. If you're with friends or in a casual situation, informal English is usually fine.
We'll continue exploring more phrases and even delve into some common idioms and slang that you might hear in informal conversations.
Silver can symbolize second place or secondary status. Like in sports, we discussed some common formal and informal expressions. And now we'll dive even deeper, covering more phrases and also touching on idioms and slang that you might hear in everyday conversations. Here, the second place winner gets a silver medal.
That's right, James. Understanding idioms and slang can really help you sound more natural when speaking English. They are often used in informal settings, but we'll also show you how to handle them in more formal contexts when necessary.
Absolutely. Let's start with a few more formal and informal expressions for specific scenarios. We'll cover expressing agreement, disagreement, making suggestions, and giving compliments.
Great idea. Let's start with expressing agreement. In formal situations, you might say, "I completely agree, I concur with your opinion," or "that is a valid point." For example, "I completely agree with your assessment of the project."
In informal situations, you can say, "I agree, yeah, that's right," or even just "totally." For example, "Yeah, that's right, the project looks good."
Next, let's talk about expressing disagreement. In formal settings, you might say, "I respectfully disagree. I see your point, but I have a different perspective." Or, "I'm afraid I must disagree. For example, "I see your point, but I have a different perspective on the project's timeline."
Informally, you could say, "I don't think so, I'm not sure about that," or "No way." For example, "I don't think the project will be finished on time."
Making suggestions is another common scenario. Formally, you might say, example, "I would suggest that we review the budget again before making a decision."
Informally, for example, "How about we look at the budget again?"
Now let's look at giving compliments. In formal situations, you might say, "Your presentation was excellent. I was very impressed with your work." Or, "You have done an outstanding job." For example, "Your presentation was excellent, and I was very impressed with your thorough research."
Informally, you could say, "Great job, you did awesome," or "That was amazing." For example, "Great job on the presentation, it was amazing."
Those are some great examples, James. Now let's move on to idioms and slang. Idioms are phrases where the meaning isn't obvious from the individual words. Slang includes informal words and expressions that are often used by particular groups of people.
That's right. Idioms and slang can be confusing, but they're a big part of everyday English. Let's start with some common idioms. One idiom you might hear is break the ice. This means to start a conversation in a social setting, especially if people are meeting for the first time.
Yes, and you might hear it in both formal and informal settings. In a formal setting, you might say, "Let's have a team-building activity to break the ice before our meeting." Informally, you could say, "We played a game to break the ice at the party."
Another common idiom is barking up the wrong tree. This means to pursue a mistaken or misguided course of action. Formally, you might say, "I believe you are barking up the wrong tree with this strategy." Informally, you could say, "I think you're barking up the wrong tree by blaming John."
A fun idiom is kick the bucket, which means to die. This one is quite informal and might be used in storytelling or casual conversation. Formally, you might say, "He passed away last year," but informally, you might hear, "He kicked the bucket last year."
Now, let's discuss some slang. Slang words are often specific to certain groups or regions. For example, in informal American English, you might hear cool to describe something great or impressive. That movie was cool.
Another slang term is lit, which means exciting or excellent. You might hear someone say, "That party was lit." It's a very informal way to express that something was really fun or exciting.
Bail is another slang term that means to leave abruptly. For example, "I have to bail on the meeting early." It's informal and usually used in casual conversations.
And then there's crash, which can mean to fall asleep suddenly or to attend a party without an invitation. For example, I crashed at my friend's place last night, or we decided to crash the party.
We've explored various aspects of formal and informal English, from expressions and phrases to idioms and slang. Now, we'll focus on mastering communication in different contexts such as dining out, traveling, and engaging on social media.
That's right, James. Being able to communicate effectively in different situations is key to feeling confident and comfortable in English. Let's start with dining out.
When dining out in a formal setting, it's important to use polite language and observe proper etiquette. For example, when ordering, you might say, "I would like to have the salmon, please," or "Could I please have a glass of water?" Remember to use please and thank you generously.
Yes, and when addressing the server, you would typically use sir or ma'am in formal settings. For example, "Excuse me, sir, could you bring the check, please?"
In informal dining situations, you can be more relaxed and casual. You might say, "I'll have the burger, please," or "Can I get a refill on my drink?" You can address the server by name if they've introduced themselves.
Now, let's talk about traveling. When traveling in a formal context, such as for business or attending a conference, you'll want to communicate clearly and professionally. When asking for directions, for example, you might say, "Could you please tell me how to get to the convention center?"
And when interacting with officials or staff, use polite language and avoid slang. For example, "Excuse me, could you help me with my luggage?" Or "I'd like to confirm my reservation, please."
In informal travel situations, like when you're on vacation or exploring a new city with friends, you can be more relaxed and conversational. You might say, "Hey, do you know how to get to the beach from here?" Or "Can you grab my bag?"
Let's move on to social media interactions. Social media is a mix of formal and informal communication, depending on your audience and the platform you're using. When interacting with colleagues or professional contacts, it's best to maintain a formal tone and use proper grammar and punctuation.
Yes, for example, when commenting on a colleague's post about a project, you might say, "Great work. Looking forward to seeing the results."
In informal social media interactions, such as with friends or family, you can be more casual and use emojis or abbreviations. For example, "Loved your vacation pics. Looks like you had a blast." And remember, practice is key to mastering these skills. The more you expose yourself to different situations and contexts, the more comfortable you'll become in using formal and informal English appropriately.
Well, that brings us to the end of our series, Navigating English, Formal and Informal Situations. We hope you found it helpful and informative.
Yes, and we encourage you to keep practicing and exploring the nuances of the English language. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more tips and insights on mastering English communication.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We wish you the best of luck in your English learning endeavors.
Until next time, keep navigating those English waters with confidence.
Bye for now.
Bye.